The resident typically just puts in their name here, their email address, puts in their address, and this is a spam protection number that they put in. They put in the code, they send it, and it'll go directly off to me. Within the comprehensive plan button, you'll see the agenda, and there's the agenda this evening. So we made it very quick and easy to get to it. If we go back a little bit here. If I can get back here. Go back to the town economy report. So right in the main thing also within the new website, which is a lot cleaner than our previous website for the town, you can see, again, another access point to the planning process is right here, and then that takes you right through as you go forward into the different things that we do in planning. So that's a brief overview of the website. Again, we tried to make it simple and easy to move forward and to get comments to our committee. Any questions or comments as to that? So next on our process here for this evening, this is where the overview came of the RFQ. We sent out through professional services, we sent out to Club Harbor, we sent out to Saratoga Associates, and also Department of Engineers. Through the professional services process, we developed a committee for review to make recommendation to this committee. On that committee was Jack Cunningham. We had Chris Dennis, who is unable to attend right now. We also had Craig Shamlin, Rebecca Kennedy, who unfortunately did not make it tonight, and Peter Studo. We had meetings on August 16th, where we read the applications that were submitted. And then on the 19th, we had an interview of the applicant. Several questions were asked and answered of the applicant, and the committee went forward to make recommendations to hire a review. They are here tonight, Mike Welty and Chuck Moss. They're here tonight to specifically go over the proposal that we have before you, and they will go through an overview of that process. Michael and Chuck.
Come up here, that's this way. Hand out a one-page summary, it'll be a little easier to work through than the ones that's around. Yeah, that's good.
That's okay.
Okay, so my name is Mike Welty. This is Chuck Voss. Just by way of introduction, both of us are professional planners with Barton & Judas. For me, this is particularly interesting because I had the pleasure of working with this community in the development of the 2005 plan when I worked at Saratoga Associates. So some of you who may have been involved in public meetings or something during that process may recognize a slightly heavier, more gray version of that person who stood up in front of you over the crossings for many public meetings and throughout that process. So it's nice to see everyone again. And Chuck has been working with the planning board for how many years now?
Probably 4 or 5 years now, Peter.
Probably
It's been quite a while. So many of you know me from attending most of the meetings. Barton & Juice has done a lot of site plan reviews for the town along with the other TDs. So having that kind of first-hand knowledge in the community is, I think, very helpful, especially as this community moves forward. So Mike and I make a great pair in terms of taking a hard planning look at this project.
So just, we wanted to go through basically the content of our proposal, but before we kind of walk you through the outline of that, it's just, I think, important to back up for a moment and just think about the big picture of what the plan is and what it's intended to do. And the way I like to describe a comprehensive plan in its most simple form is that it's an opportunity to look at, the current state, where you are today, how are things going, what are your issues of concern, and so forth. To focus on the future, 5, 10, 15 years out. What is it that we'd like to change? What is it that we would like to preserve? And what is our vision for the community going forward? And then ultimately the plan document is really about how do we get from here to there. You know, the topics that can be in the plan can range. The state law that defines what a comprehensive plan is really pretty flexible in that regard. So the topics really should be tailored to your particular community and what are the issues that are most important to you. And so, you know, we may talk about residential growth or different types of residential. We may talk about economic development, open space protection, recreation, community character. Any number of things are fair game to talk about here in the comprehensive plan. The plan ultimately, as I said, will have recommendations. It will include a section that talks about implementation. So we should, when we come out of the planning process, we should have some clear direction about what is it that we need to do next. What are our short-term actions? What are our slightly longer-term actions to achieve the things that we said we want to achieve? Because you know, you need to prioritize. That's one of the things that can really be beneficial through this process. What are the things that we want to focus on in year 1, in year 2, and so on? And how do we organize ourselves to do those things? How do we fund those activities? So the plan will include details about those items as well. Certainly zoning or subdivision regulations, any land use regulations are supposed to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So to the degree that changes are made, there may be a need to go back and look at the zoning and see if there's a need to update the zoning in one way or another to reflect those changes. So that's something else that we would look at a conceptual level here in the plan, but that would be a follow-up activity once the plan is completed. And of course, your role is critical because you are the representatives of the community, of the town, and you ultimately will be providing to the town board your recommendation, right? A comprehensive plan that you recommend up to the town board. Town board will be responsible for adopting that document, but hopefully we do our job well. If we include the public, engage people in the process, when we get to the point of sending that plan up to the town board, most of the major issues and things will have already been discussed. We might not ultimately have 100% agreement on every issue, but we'll have done a thorough enough job of vetting those issues that everyone can feel like their voice has been heard, the plan reflects those voices, and that what you're sending up to the town board is something that is representative of the community. That's what we want to achieve over the next several months. And so if you flip over to the back of the little one-page handout, rather than thumbing through the proposal, which we didn't want to do with you, we put a little outline together of some of the key tasks, so we can just talk about those. Obviously, the first task is project coordination. You know, we know we'll be meeting we will be meeting with you on a regular basis, probably once a month. That would be typical. You know, we would try to get things to you in advance of those meetings so that you have opportunity to review them prior to the meeting so that we can get things accomplished during the meetings. Those are really working meetings of the committee, but they are open to the public. Typically, we would have a place for public comment at the end of the agenda for those meetings as well. We need to refine our community outreach process early on, make sure that we're on the same page about how we want to try to engage the community. And we need to do some work updating the information about the community. Now, Colony has a lot of information about that's already available through the planning department and other sources, the Regional Planning Commission. So we're going to be basically pulling that information together to update what was in the 2005 plan, what's changed. Right? We need to kind of have a sense of that. And some of what we focus on in that can also be driven by the issues that seem to be important to the community today. So maybe there's one thing or another that needs a little more attention than something else. Community outreach is key, right? It's important that we have not only the involvement of the community during the process for the sake of getting those ideas, but also I think if you want to have buy-in and ultimately implement the plan, you need to have people feel like they were invested in the process, that the document represents that outreach. And so we outlined a series of public workshops in our proposal. One would be fairly early on in the process, which would be focused on the issues of concern. We would also do some, part of this is also public education, right? It's explaining what this whole process is about, why the town is doing it, where the town is now. But then ultimately we would want to focus in that first workshop on what are the issues today? What are the things that we're looking to try to figure out through this process. What are the things that we value or cherish that we want to try to keep the same, right? Because there are things that we certainly, reasons why you all live here and are taking the time to participate in this process. So the second public workshop would be around visioning. Okay, that's the where do we go from here? What do we want to be in 10 or 15 years? And then the third public workshop would be as we have ideas for the plan. The vision, the goals, the plan, recommendations, at least in a conceptual form, we would want to go back and check our progress with the community again, and see where we've hit the mark and where we need to still make some refinements. In the end, there is a technical requirement under state law for 2 public hearings. One would be held by this committee, and then one would be held by the town board. So that's sort of the minimum requirement under state law. Clearly, you want to do more than that in order for this process to be successful. We also included in our proposal the number of interviews with community leaders. We will work with you to identify who those folks should be, who we should be reaching out to at different points in the process. We talked about a roundtable discussion with town officials and select stakeholders, folks like the planning board, the zoning board, the folks who deal with the sort of land use and growth issues on a monthly basis through their roles as volunteers on those committees. We talked about using the media resources that are available, such as the website that Joe was just describing, to get information out there and also to make information available and input back to the committee. And then there are a number of other things that we suggested as options that we could also consider doing. Additional workshops, focus groups, neighborhood meetings, those things could certainly be incorporated into the process. A survey, written or online, can be done. There's a lot of different tools that sort of available that, based on what we have as our goal and what the resources are available to the project, that we could include as additional items. So those are the community outreach components. Ultimately, once we have our current state, we start to talk about the visioning, right? Where do we want to go from here? That's where we develop our vision statement, our goals. We look at the 2005 plan, and we see what is still relevant, what needs to be changed, what needs to perhaps be added that wasn't considered then. And then we draft the plan document itself. In the end, there is again a requirement under the State Environmental Quality Review Act that we look at the plan through that lens as well. Make sure that we cover our bases there, and then there's a final plan and a plan adoption process that has to take place. But we try to outline a process that looks at this getting done over about a 10-month period of time. That's pretty ambitious, but it's certainly possible to do it that quickly. But I think we will want with you to measure along the way, make sure that we're moving at a pace that makes sense to get this done both efficiently, but also comprehensively. Right? I mean, there's a balance to be achieved there. So in that little timeline at the bottom, it kind of shows how these different elements relate to one another. Committee meetings obviously are an ongoing thing, but the different other pieces of it kind of fall into place over that 10-month period. That's the quick summary of what was in the proposal. Chuck, do you have anything to add?
I think really the only key takeaway that we had from our initial interview was, as Mike said, the public education component to this whole process. With a lot of land use and planning decisions that are occurring in the town, and a lot of processes that go with those decision-making things, it's kind of a mystery sometimes to folks who don't deal with this stuff on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So we want to certainly work with the committee, and I know that the selection committee expressed a strong desire to have a very progressive educational component in this whole process. So Mike and I certainly would want to embrace that as we get into the public workshops, the public meetings, the outreach efforts, just to bring people in line with how this all works, why it all fits together, the relevance of all the different pieces, certainly the relevance of all the different steps that we would be taking, and then the outcome. And then, as Mike said early on, those next steps to taking, the recommendations and the goals from the plan and actually achieving those over the next, 5, 10, 15 years. So I think that's a critical piece.
do you see that wrapping together with the process? Because, you know, our next September meeting is going to be the accomplishments, the work to be done, move forward, and move the plan. And that education component, I think, is highly critical because the education process, I think you have to peel out what is a planning process, what is a DPW, you know, Department of Public Works. Right now, it seems to be a lot of comments coming in are all being muddled together. How do you separate that through this comprehensive plan and make sure we're focused on the right thing going forward?
That's great. I mean, obviously, we're going to try to, in that first public workshop, I think that'll be a big component of what we want to do during that workshop, probably some form of presentation in the beginning, talk about what the plan is, what it's not, and so forth. But how do you reach those people that are not going to come out to the meeting? Because certainly, you know, I remember at the crossings, we had quite good turnout, quite, you know, most of the time, which was great. But you're still only touching a very small percentage of the people in the town. So, you know, the website is definitely more relevant today than it was 10 years ago. It's certainly something that I think more people will use. But we will need to work with you to think about how else do we get that message out. Because we can take, you know, that education and put it into a website form, into other forms that people will perhaps read. You know, we can go out to schools, we can talk to students. That's always an interesting conversation to have. You know, get students involved in the process. There are a lot of different ways that you can get that out. We'll need to work with you to figure out what works best here today.
The county planning board has a county approval process as well, is that correct?
That's correct. They have a referral under general municipal law that they will have to look at. I mean, typically we'd be talking to them along the way in any case, so it's not going to be something that they'll be seeing for the first time when we get to that adoption phase. Yes, they do have a role.
Any other questions?
Yeah. I think the way that we went through the process and we went through the two submissions that we had, one of the applicants, or one of the ones that we reached out to, elected not to submit based on the fact that they were deeply involved within our update of the GPIS in the airport area. So they actually retracted their submission, which left us with Saratoga Associates and Barton & Judas. As I said, the committee was, they leaned toward Barton & Judas for the selection process. And we'll put that before you. We want to make a recommendation as a committee as a whole to the town board for our September 1st meeting. Do we have consensus from the selection committee? Jack, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to, I was on the committee, I was very impressed with both submittals, but I thought Barton & Judas went much further than the other proposal. Also, I think Barton & Judas is part of the town of Colony. They work with the town of Colony, they exist in the town of Colony, and they do a very good job for us. And so, aside from the fact that the proposal was very thorough, the fact that this company is committed to this community, I think that's as far as bringing them in as a partner in this process. So that's one of the best supported.
Anyone else?
I mean, I agree with everything that Jack said. I mean, I thought that Barton & Judas was going to end up giving us a much better product than Saratoga Associates. Explaining something.
And from our point,
Again, I was on the committee, and I think they understood the problem.
This is so important. Excuse me, just a point of order. In general,
Excuse me, ma'am, this is not an open meeting, or it's an open meeting, but not a public meeting.
but you're discussing
You can
a proposal in
please-
front of a
could you please-
proposee.
Could you please hold your comments to the end of the meeting?
Sure.
Thank you.
Again, I think we need to fix the problem addressed in the previous meeting. There was no subs involved. What was being done, subcontracting. Looking at the breakdown, principals spending a lot of time in the project. It would not be unrealistic to say that the principals will be involved.
Would you please speak louder or use a microphone, please?
we don't have microphones. So that's why I think the subcommittee, the selection committee, elected to hire Barbara Andrews on behalf of the board. So we're gonna send a full recommendation to the town board for September 1st agenda.
Should we have a motion and a vote on that?
Sure.
I'll move to recommend Martin and Judas.
I'll second.
All members? Oh, any opposed? I'm sorry. I apologize on that. All right, last on the agenda that we have for this evening is any open.
That was illegal. I have never, I've worked for the state for 11 years. I've worked for the federal government. This is the first time I've ever witnessed a public organization such as yourselves discuss a competing proposal in front of a proposee and discuss its merits. Usually they're excused from the room. It's just a matter of process. This is no comment on the quality of the proposal at all, but I just am shocked that you would do that. Sorry I erupted, but I was like, oh my God.
All I was doing was explaining to the group that was making a recommendation why I support this proposal.
But generally speaking, once they've done their presentation, they step out of the room, you have your private discussion, you call them back, and then you tell them your decision.
There's different ways to do it, but that's not the only way.
That's what we did during the selection process.
They had already
on
decided.
August 19th. They stepped out of the room and then they were notified afterwards.
So the selection had already been made prior to this
The
meeting.
committee made us, the subsection is making a recommendation, the full committee, the full committee, which adopted, or the town board.
Okay.
The committee does have the option to go into executive session if they so choose, to talk about the promotion or hiring of a particular person. But the committee didn't choose to do it in this case. That's how I see it.
Okay.
And again, this was a recommendation, the final decision will be made by the town board at the September 1st town board meeting. And I'm sure the town board members will thoroughly discuss the proposal, and there will probably not be any representatives from Barton and Judas there. We have to hire the process. Yes, sir.
Now, Barton and Judas, they were the company that did the 2012 Railroad Avenue revitalization plan. I think they did a great job on that. I think they had some great vision, and that's something that I would like to talk about in the future.
Anyone else?
Behind you.
I would like to know how many citizens, not employees of the town of Conway, but how many are sitting on your board?
I think everybody here is a resident of the town.
Lori, I think that everyone is a resident, but I also think that, I believe there's 4 residents that have no connection with the town, either as a volunteer on one of their boards or as a town employee such as myself.
Will the town board get copies of the proposal
Yes.
prior to?
Just a question, and I would like to make some other comments later, long after everyone else is done. But, you know, one of the things, I really got to hand it to you for doing this and doing it in a public fashion. One of the problems that people have when they come to the meetings here is they can't see, they can't hear, and they don't have materials. So if you had a one-page summary of what their proposal was, it certainly would have been beneficial to everyone in the audience to at least be able to follow along with that. And I offer that as constructive criticism. And, you know, when you get to the point where you talk about what improvements could be made in the planning process, you know, an audio-visual system, putting those documents up would be really helpful for the citizens who are here to try to follow the process.
That's exactly what we've heard in the past, Paul. That's what I said the last time, we were moving towards that.
Okay,
We're
I just,
debated
like,
testimony
a
right
couple of
now.
examples here tonight that appeared to be relevant.
Yep. Any other questions? Or is it gentlemen? Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Hi, Joe. Sadie Fox.
Yeah.
I just want to say I appreciate the emphasis on the educational component for the community. And it is a ongoing need to balance resident concerns with with a foundation of resident knowledge about the process, which really covers the gamut. You have people that know nothing to people that know a lot and everything in between. And it affects a lot of times the public's, the way that the public will approach the meetings and the forums. So I can appreciate the open-mindedness of kind of any approach possible to engage the public and to educate them. Even though I'm not a formal member of any neighborhood association, I would emphasize the engagement of various neighborhood associations across town. Because even though some of them that I'm familiar with may seem loosely formed, where there is specific interest in those pockets of town, they can come together very quickly as a group to be a part of and help disseminate information and education, you know, more so than, although it's a creative idea, more so than my 12-year-old in her school that can't come home and doesn't really understand the process, although it's a generous offer to get them involved in public policy when they're young, which is what I want to see. So I would just encourage you to not overlook the power of the people to assemble their small neighborhood pocket groups, whether they be formal or informal groups, and tap into those as avenues of engagement and sharing knowledge and information.
Yeah.
And also because your comprehensive plan states that that the backbone for Colony's character overall resides in the definition of its neighborhoods. That's what the comprehensive plan states. So if you're talking about something as impacting as possibly changing zoning, and you won't know until you get further in the process, that's a very big impact on community character from border to border, and would have the most, obviously, the most impact on the outcomes. And everyone, every stakeholder is concerned with, like you said, maintaining the reasons we all live here while balancing future need. So I would encourage you to find and tap into those people and have those people help you branch out further into the neighborhood pockets, neighborhood associations, and obviously the Colony Coalition of Neighborhoods, which I'm not a part of, but again aware of, to help you penetrate that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add along those lines that education is a two-way street, and I quoted, I think it was Chuck said, bring people in line, get the message out. I just want to say that there are so many amazing people in the community that it shouldn't be just, well, we're going to educate them to this way or to this plan or to this. You know, you've got to have, there has to be an open mind for the education, and it has to go both ways. And there might be people that are going to change your opinion, and I'm hoping that there'll be enough openness to change the opinion.
That's good.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't think anyone has formed an opinion yet to change. Okay? And, you know, we've offered to meet with the various groups. We offered to meet with Save Colony. We did an intermeeting at the library where I offered to meet with you and explain the approval process. I haven't heard from you since. My offer is still open if you'd like to meet with me. I'd be happy to meet with your group. You had questions about the RFP process. It's on YouTube. If you don't believe me, you can watch it. And as a matter of fact, that was taped. Thank you very much. But that offer is still open. We are looking forward to incorporating all the community groups. Amy, you've worked with me in the past, but we had the issues on the notice.
And a great process it took
It
place.
worked out well. And all your input was, very greatly appreciated and was incorporated in the changes in the zoning. And we want to do the same thing with the community groups now. All you have to do is reach out to me, and I'll be happy to meet with you.
Mike, I'm sorry, I didn't reach out to you, but Kathy Love would respond to this because she did reach out.
I'm sorry, Kathy.
I didn't reach out to you. I had reached out to Joe and left a couple messages, and then
Worse than fact, I didn't even CC our planning board chairman, and we've yet to get any answers. The last email I sent to you was June 16th of this past year, 2016. I even forwarded it to Peter today again to say, what is my next step? Should I reach out to Kathy one more time to see if we can get those questions here so we can formulate a meeting?
We did.
I'd be happy to resend all the emails that we have. I have to check.
My understanding was we had, and that I had called you a couple times after that, I believe just twice, so that we could have a conversation to set up the meeting. And I never heard back from you. I talked to your secretary twice.
I'll send them tomorrow to you, so you can have them. So
Well,
we can get back
after
together
that,
collectively as a group.
I think the point now is to move forward with the
Correct.
meeting, okay? So we'll set that up. We'll be in touch with you,
And that's what I
Joe.
said.
And
all I
with
was
Mike
asking
as
for is
well.
that information so we can be
We
prepared to
we
answer
have
questions
done that,
after
and we
the
will
meeting.
do it again.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I make one more comment? I did read the addendum from the 2005, and I was really surprised that the focus groups and what the public was saying then could be exactly what our points are right now. And it was a little bit discouraging in a way to read that, because I'm thinking, well, what did all those meetings do? What did all that input do? That it seems like all the issues were not resolved. Most of them were the same, so.
I'll tell you, when you look at the 2005 comprehensive plan, you're exactly right. Because back in 2005, when they adopted this as part of the process, they sent out a survey to 35,000 homes. 4,900 citizens responded to the survey, to the comprehensive plan. And I'm quoting this on page 2. The top 3 concerns regarding the town, according to the survey, included traffic, overdevelopment, and lack of sidewalks. Exactly the same thing we've been talking about today.
So what that's encouraging.
What type of development? Did it define what type of development?
Pardon me, Amy?
When it said lack of development, did it define
said
what type of
overdevelopment.
Overdevelopment.
Thank you.
There's somebody behind you?
Behind you.
I especially like Chris Churchill's comments in the Times Union. I'm happy that my relatives sold 18 acres of our family land to the Times Union because I enjoyed that paper. I enjoy a lot of comments. The one thing I'm concerned about, this is not just Colony, it's Albany. When I read, not in my backyard, I'm very concerned. I don't think we've addressed the original town comprehensive plan, the need for housing options and affordable workforce housing. I'm so happy there is going to be one up at the Elks Club. I would hope that there would be more in the center of Colony, perhaps, because I'm selling land, 13 acres behind Times Union, and I would like it to be apartments. I would like it to be, because we need affordable housing, we need rental housing, and I just think it's a very good location, but the need for more affordable rentals and housing, universal design, so that seniors, if you have an old farmhouse and a big house, you can still stay in your community, either duplexes, in-law apartments, multi-generational apartments. And so it really angers me when people are not in my backyard, because I'll tell you what was very present here. This was all farms. I saw that in the paper. And before I was here, there were pigs and farms here. I know I miss those farms, I miss those pigs, I miss those cows. So when people, they're not in my backyard, I know who was here first. And so you came here and you have a beautiful home, you have a great school district. And so now I would like you to remember us. I would like you to remember the people who fought even to get a Shaker High School built. There was so much opposition. I had to be shipped out to Millman. Most of the farm kids here were shipped out to other schools. We do have a school, great school districts. And our citizens, our seniors who make Colony what it is, should be allowed to stay here, live here, and have housing options. And so I'm really happy to see this happening again. It's just that we do not have traffic like Atlanta, Georgia, or Boston. I've lived in Boston, I've lived in the Bronx. So when people say about the traffic, there's some inconveniences. It's just that we do need housing options, and we can make cause a little bit more traffic. So you'll come up with those and those studies and those numbers. All I know is we need housing options, and with that 13 acres, I want to help veterans. Son was in the military, housing for veterans, or there's another possibility I'm talking with, solar housing. I mean, solar panels on the 13 acres. So I'm working with someone, I have a good contractor, it's time for me to sell, I'm 75 years old, my sister needs her money, and so I really know that this land has been in our family for 102 years, and so I do not want all of a sudden not in my backyard, because I feel that this land was not thought of in a lot of the planning process. It's back at time Junior, but nobody knows about it, so sandwiched in. Neither Mohawk line went through it, and now to hear, and to get to it, you drive through duplexes, so I say affordable housing, duplexes, in-law apartments, built cottages, and it would be very nice. It would be very nice, so I hope when my person comes before you, that you remember that in the original plan, we were looking for housing options, affordable housing. Thank you.
Hi, I just had one comment. When the presenter was, from Bartonville, Judice was asking about ideas for outreach. One of the ideas I had was, since you mentioned that only a small number of people can attend meetings, and I know it was brought up in the debate for the supervisor last fall, which was televising town board meetings. So I know you have audiovisual capability via the town library, or possibly maybe audiovisual students at Shaker or County High School, that maybe you would think of recording these meetings and putting them up on your website, so that people who aren't here can see what's going on in the meetings, as well as those who can attend. And the other question I had was, I see that there were some documents here which I was hoping to see on the screen,
Yeah.
a summary. And I know some town planning departments have a feature on their website, which is like a folder. I don't know what your website is capable of, but I hope, since we are a large town colony, that you can actually have a folder on the website where you can share documents. So we could have seen this summary that you all have in front of you tonight. You could have seen.
Barton, just if I could interrupt, Barton and Judas handed this out tonight.
Right, but
So
I'm-
we didn't see it till before, just now as
Okay,
well.
but going forward, all of these documents, I mean, I'd certainly be willing to foil all of this. I don't think as part of an open committee you want. Well, no, I don't think so. You have a lot of documents here that aren't even up there. I haven't seen this.
Well, just to defend the process, this is their proposal, and you normally keep the proposal until the
Close.
person's selected.
Right.
It's not publicly distributed.
Right, but
That's
going
true.
forward, if that.
Yeah, I mean, the comment's well
There,
taken, but, the
any-
comment's well taken from my perspective, but just so you know, it's not like we're hiding documents. This, they handed out today, and this is their proposal.
So that, I
Those are
just-
the only, and the agenda is the only other thing, which is publicly
No, we just
distributed.
didn't see that until, I didn't see that till today on the agenda. I was looking. So if that could be something that the town would do, so that we don't have to foil your meeting records constantly. Yeah, I know that, but there's other documents, you've had meetings and things like that where you've been circulating things that. Okay, well, is there a commitment here then that anything that's generated by your committees will be up on the website in a
Yeah,
folder?
If it's something that we have to, whatever, act on, Michael, or whatever, once it's back to the fund and put it out, we'll go through the process.
Virtually everything. There are some things that are not subject to FOIL and shouldn't be disclosed, but most things are very rare. And this is going to be a very open process. And so anything that's not privileged that could hurt the town will certainly be posted on the website and certainly be subject to any FOIL.
And then I was wondering about the comment section. Will you be able to, and people are making comments, submitting comments, will you be keeping a listing of the comments on the website as well?
It'll be part of it.
Part of it, yes, we'll manage.
Which I'm trying to keep right now.
The comments and your responses, because it might head off a lot of duplicate questions.
I've got a quick follow-up on that. Where you can submit stuff via the website, you have to type your comments.
You're just telling me.
Yeah, can you try that, Paul? It was my understanding that you can click and drag something into the box.
Put a PDF in there or something, or?
I will confirm that with Craig.
Okay, so for example, if I had something that I would like to give you to be part of the record, worst comes to worst, the default, I could send it to you. Okay, that'd be very helpful rather than feeling as though you're constrained to a little box.
Behind you.
Hi, my name's Tom Romano, and I was one of, and my wife, of the 3,500 people that participated in the original comp plan review committee meetings. And it was our impression with the adoption of the 2005 plan that we had some measure of comfort knowing that if there was a plan in place, that if people were interested in developing residential property, they knew where to go. If they wanted to do commercial, they knew where to go. We felt a sense of comfort that where we lived, our zoning would remain the same. But as it turns out, in our area of the town, which is the western section of the town, Cambridge, we've had several rezonings. And what that brings to my thought is, what good is this plan if it could be changed at will within this 10-year period, where we thought that we knew what our neighborhood was going to remain as. Now, I want to know why it's called a comp plan when it's subject to change in between this so-called review period of 10 years. And, I mean, it should be a plan where people that want to come into the town to develop can go, can look at a map and say, this is what I want to do, and here's where you can do it. And I can't see why we call it a comprehensive plan when it's always changing.
And it's big changes. It's not changing little changes. You're changing from residential to commercial uses. That's a major change. So that, I think, is what is going for. It's not minor changes. It's major changes, and it's also large parcels of the town. It's not, 2 acres or 3 acres of that. We, as you know, out where we are, you rezoned a huge parcel, okay? And then you came along recently and you just rezoned another parcel back to what it was originally. So it's confusion on our part that, I feel like I'm in flux, that there's no stability in what my house is zoned, what my property is worth, because I'm at your mercy as to what you want to do to change that zoning, because I'm seeing it happening. I've seen it twice.
Can I just say that the comprehensive plan is a plan, it's comprehensive because it's the entire town, not just, I don't know the ins and outs of all the specifics that you're talking about, but it's overall, but it's also a living document. You don't want to have a document that is locked in for 10 years that cannot be changed, because there may be good reasons why we want to take a look at these issues. I can't speak to your specific issue, but in general, that's why we have comprehensive plans, and that's why we have review processes, that's why we're reviewing this now and updating it, and then possibly updating town laws to match that. But sometimes you put a law in place and it doesn't work, and so we gotta go back and revisit it. You can't just say, well, we're gonna wait 10 years, because it may not make sense. So,
I guess my problem is who decided it didn't work?
the town board is the final arbitrator on everything. Public hearings are held, and the town board passes laws, and they make those changes. So all of that, anything that happens, the town board is the final say on all of this.
But do you listen to people? That's
I'm not
my
on the
problem.
And I do listen to people.
That's,
I'm not on the
that's the bottom line, is, and when you take, in our area, and I'm gonna use that specifically, because that's what's important. You took the town board rezone stuff from residential and put it back to commercial. That's what the town board did, okay? And it was, a petitions were handed in, people asked, residents asked not to do this. The town board did it, I didn't make a big deal out of it, I said, okay, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, okay? Then AUV Way comes along, okay? That was commercial. The guy wants to build now a bunch of homes. Town board comes along and rezones that back to residential, which is what it was in the beginning. That's my question. When does it stop? When does
Mr. Zimmerman, you're
things...
talking about two different things. In 2005, the former town board adopted a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Comprehensive plan which is supposed to set the vision and goals for the town. On January 4th, 2007, 2 years later, they adopted a new zoning law. The new zoning law deals with specific areas of the town and district. In 2007, they changed where you live from one type of zone to a different type of zone, correct?
This is what I...
It was, I believe...
Not necessarily, not my piece of property.
But next door.
Okay,
Under your
in my area, yes. What they did is they eliminated, basically, commercial zoning. What they did is they rezoned it into residential. And it was, they looked at the area and said that was what was appropriate, and that they went and said, and yes, it was, I think the ultimate plan was to phase out businesses out where we live. I think that was the ultimate thing that the town board and the study was doing. They were going to phase out businesses from our areas so that it would become, at one point, eventually, totally residential. They were doing it because there was lack of infrastructure, lack of roads and that. And there were a lot of houses out there. And that was what they did.
Living in a totally different section of the town, I will echo as a resident the general sentiment that chopping up our zoning for special use permit is always a passionate concern of residents. It's a concern of mine. It's probably a concern of everyone who owns property. So that's probably a key area of education and involvement, where you really want to make sure you cover it thoroughly. Because, and I need a refresher as to what is included in the current laws under special use permit.
That's different than a rezone, you know that, right? Yeah.
Yes, but I read in some of the recommendations on your document that are posted.
Amy, what I think you're probably talking about is a planned development district, because the
No,
town very rarely grants. the
It wasn't a
planning board very rarely
PDD.
grants special use permits.
Correct, and I'm pretty clear on a PDD. There was just language in the recommendations of the document you have posted in the comprehensive plan of changing zoning and special use wording was included in those areas, and I'm not here to ask for the refresher now, I'll go read the code.
AFRAMS is the most prominent, or the one that I can think of. That was a special use permit. That was granted by the zoning board. That's the zoning board's province.
Some are zoning boards, some are planning.
So you have permitted uses, like over there, I think office was one of the prominent permitted uses. But with a special use permit, you could also do recreational facilities. And that's generally how the special use permit works. And I'm not sure if they need a special, or a supermajority, do you know? But it's granted by the ZBA. So it's, in a way, it's a permitted use if they grant the special use permit. And it's not that high of a threshold to meet the standard of special use permit.
And I'm not referring to any one specific area of property, but I'm just saying again, the general concern about chopping up a zone and allowing for so many exceptions that even though on paper, we may still define a zone as a zone, that we can do so much.
Well, there's a thing called spot zoning, which is not permitted, which is where you take an individual lot or a small piece and zone it contrary to the surrounding zonings. So that, that is illegal, it's not a good planning thing to do, and, I think we're sensitive.
Can I kind of combine everything together here and ask Chuck and Mike for our September meeting that we have? Can we take a look at the changes that we've made? I think there were 19 to date of the land use law specifically, and how that equates back to what the comprehensive plan said, and just kind of look at what those changes might have been. If we changed a commercial use to a single family use because of the budding neighborhood, and see if we were trying to do something like that. And then we can come back and give that information here at the next meeting.
So my general sentiment is simply that it's a hot area for residents, and it deserves thoroughness and education and
Right.
discussion and vetting in the process.
Yeah.
So if I could just give a little feedback, I'm pretty new to the town. I've been to a few planning board meetings. I've been to a few community meetings. I'm here listening to this meeting. And I'm really actually excited about the consultant's plans for public engagement. I think that's really important. It's very difficult as a resident to participate in this town when there is a feeling of defensiveness as the public participates.
Yep.
So what I observe at these meetings, and this is intended to be constructive feedback. I work with a lot of towns around the state, so I'm intending to be helpful in this comment. This is not to be mean. Is that when a resident brings a concern, rather than accepting that concern and allowing them to share their concern and just allowing that, there's an immediate defense given. And I would suggest that as the consultant moves forward with the public engagement portion of this process, the discussion be allowed to involve the community concerns, the advice, the sharing of experience. And I understand as town employees and appointees and consultants, you all have a perspective and an expertise and thinking, and you know more than we do sometimes, and I get that. However, it's very, very hard to participate when you come to speak and you try your best to make your community better, and you're kind of yelled at meetings, or you're dismissed, or you're immediately attacked. So I'm just offering this as constructive feedback about the tone of these meetings going forward. It would be very helpful if we could just adjust that a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
I just wanted to say that I am concerned how an accurate, comprehensive plan can be designed in 10 months when there's so many major studies that are still outstanding, like traffic studies and maybe infrastructure. And is that going to be sort of built into the plan? And I mean, I would like to make sure that there's a way of determining whether what you want to see happen is going to really happen. And I'm thinking in the sense of the traffic studies that are outstanding, or people talk, and I'm not an expert on sewer or water, but I find it interesting because of the sinkhole in Albany, and now they're tapping into Colony's water. And I'm concerned over those kind of things, and they seem like above my head, but I would hope that somebody who's involved in a comprehensive plan would be looking at that stuff and understanding that stuff and making sure that's included in a comprehensive plan design.
There's only one traffic study going on, and it's for a specific corridor in the town. It's not a comprehensive traffic study.
Over where?
It's a traffic study of the Albany Shaker Road area from the Inkle Farm down to Osborne, Taylor Road, up Maxwell Road to Old Niskayuna, and all the way down to the roundabout by Macy's. That's the study that's going to go on. That's an Albany County study we're participating in. That's a study by Albany County. Albany Shaker Road is a county road. It's not a-
How long, when will that be done? Do you know?
That will be started sometime
It's not
later
even
this
started.
summer. But that study goes on, we'll be just looking at, one of the things that we're looking at is the intersections, how well the intersections function, what land is left to be developed in the area, and what possible additional traffic will be coming in. And then other improvements, like if we put the connector road in for Winners, to connect the Winter Circle, what improvements can be made to mitigate traffic along Albany Shaker Road. But that's the only traffic study going on. There's not other traffic studies going on. Just want to make sure that everybody understands that. It's come up several times about traffic studies. That's the only traffic study that's going on.
And just to add to that, I know they try, a couple members of the legislature tried to expand that a little bit, Jack, to get additional funding, needs for it, so I think they're going through that process now. Paul, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I spoke with the county executive's office yesterday. The resolution that was passed last year by the county legislature included the county roads. The county roads were Shaker, Osborne, and Old Niskayuna. So the county needs to have that study those roads. It was suggested to add, Maxwell, because that really is the piece that ties everything together. I know Paula told people on Maxwell Road that that was going to get looked at. But, I said to the folks for DPW and the county executive's office, if we're looking at Shaker Road, we got the intersection with Maxwell. If we're looking at Old Niskayuna Road, we're looking at the intersection with Maxwell. So what's really left is the intersection up at Route 9. So it's very easy to expand that. So I know that, the DPW staff and you are working very closely together to put that scope together so it works for both parties. And,
Funding aspect of it.
yeah, compared to the big number, from what I understand, it's a very little number, which is a difference, which, at least I can't speak at this point in time, but I don't believe anybody believes is insurmountable. So, but, I think that's a key piece, because I would like to see, and I would like to see this process driven by data. And that's like really critical data for this corridor. I was thrilled to read the planning board minutes. Somebody sent them to me from the 23rd. My goodness, that was yesterday. And you're talking about, going forward with the airport GDIS. That's phenomenal. Because those are the building blocks that you need to build a comprehensive plan. And I hope the Bout one follows as well.
And points well taken, Paul. I think that the timeline is critical, and I guess my question is to Barton and Judas, because there's a strong possibility it's going to take longer than 10 months, and you guys are prepared if that happens, correct?
Yeah,
Because
pretty common that it would.
yeah, because you don't know what's going to be generated, and we are in the process with Barbara Joe Grasso with the GDIS for the airport area. And there has been work on about mainly with the traffic, and there are some things that kind of going forward that could help, but the airport has a lot to do with the traffic, or the state rather, with the traffic in the airport area, and they do have plans, the monies are there now for the revamping of the exit 4,
which fits into that whole area there to try to alleviate Baker Road extension. That's a critical piece that you probably remember dates back to the mid-'80s, and that is actually the phase 2 of the Maxwell Road extension. The first extension was done maybe '08 or '09, I think it was right after I came. And then my question was phase 2, when is that going to be done? Because this was all brought up in the mid-'80s. When are you planning phase 2? And it was all based on funding. And so that was the issue. The issue was funding. But that is to alleviate some of the traffic congestion as at Wolf Road, Albany Shaker, and people that don't need to go on Wolf Road, but they need to go in back of Wolf Road. You can only get there on half of the roadway there because it doesn't go all the way through. So all those things are being worked on as far as some of the traffic areas. But the other key component is infrastructure. And maybe some people are not aware of the infrastructure plans that are in place, but we're ahead of the curve. We've already started. It's a 10-year plan for our sewer department, and they have started that. Our engineers, along with other consultants, have put together a very comprehensive plan for our sewer system based on the priority of need. The areas that are the worst are going to be worked on first, and by the end of that period of time, we should be in a position, the town should be in a position where they are confident that their infrastructure for sewers is where it should be. And water is about a 5 to 7 year plan. They've done a tremendous amount of updates with the airport project that went from Loudonville, I think, all the way over to Sparrowbush to that area. That was a huge improvement along with all the tanks. Somebody mentioned that Albany is using our water, which we are working with them. They are in basically a crisis situation. We have plenty of water. We're in the process of working on a grant with Albany. Albany actually initiated that, brought us into that grant. Our main tank, or one of our main tanks, along with the Albany Reservoir, border each other. And we now have a system for backup system it's in Clifton Park. It's from years ago. And so that is being worked on, that grant. What we're hoping is that everything goes through. We'll be able to have a system in that area where our tank is off of Albany Shaker and the reservoir for Albany. Those two meet together, and it's a system where if Albany needs water, it's turning a valve. If we need water, it's turning a valve. So that's a future plan that hopefully this grant money will come through. But all of those major infrastructure projects are going to have an impact on the comprehensive plan, the final product, because you need to have proper infrastructure. So we put a tremendous amount into that infrastructure, into the infrastructure plans, and so they're readily available from our engineers. So that part should be, they should be able to map that out for you pretty easily. The traffic is a little bit more difficult because it's a multi-level study between the town, county, and CDTC. So whenever you have more than one agency involved, it gets much more complicated, and those kind of things do go on. So some of the things that people had questions on, the infrastructure, the GEIS for the airport area, the status of water, all of those kinds of things are in place. If anybody wants to come in, please just let us know. We're more than happy to go over all of that. A lot of the projects that have been done, I give credit to the planning department, and a lot of town board members are here that have worked on these as well. They are redevelopment projects. The majority of them are redevelopment of buildings that were basically falling down or very underutilized or vacant. The last thing we want, especially when we were in a situation where the town was on the verge of bankruptcy, was to have buildings that were boarded up. And we didn't want to have that, and so a lot of planning has gone into redevelopment we'd be more than happy to go over those with you as well. And if you've met some opposition as far as concerns and things like that, that's something that I personally don't want you to have. I get concerns every day and talk to people, and they go through our office. They go out to departments, and we can't be there to micromanage the departments, but certainly if something like that occurs, then we're more than happy to have some discussions and try to just mediate so it's a better experience. So that's something that can be done. But those are some of the things that are going on that you may not know that may help not only the public, but it'll also, as Barton Lujudis moves forward with as the consultants, there is a lot of knowledge there's a lot of background, and there's a lot with some of the areas that took a lot to clean up some of the zoning. Some things had occurred. And Helen and Tom, that one area you're talking about, Loopy, I can talk to you later because I can let you know there's a true benefit to that. It's actually better outcome than what it would have been. But those are some of the things that are going on that might help as we move forward. But I want to let you know that all of those things are going on because I know we had questions about why not doing the GEIS, why not open space. There's lots of stuff with open space. Something's going to come out very shortly because many people think that we own Schuyler Flats, many acres of land down there, and it's a cultural site, a historic site. Open Space Institute owns that. We do not own it. We only maintain it. They called me maybe about 6-8 months ago asking if we would like them to donate that to us. So we are getting Schuyler Flats. They are donating that to us. We already maintain it, so it's a good piece of open space to maintain. We've had the other open space donated to us by Dr. Fox on River Road. That's going to be trails and just open preserved space. We preserved the land by our old tanks on River Road, those types of things. But we have all that information. Be more than happy to sit down with you, go over that with you, and try to answer some of your questions. And I think that will be helpful. So just wanted to open that up so people know. The door is open, and you can set up either a meeting with Joe. If you call Mike, if you call me, my secretary will put that in the book. I would rather have those meetings and have those discussions because maybe there's something we're missing, but there may be some things that you don't know or you don't know the rationale. And also background, that's very important. The background is very, very critical. And I know that sounds like, crying or whatever, but it's not. It's critical, and it's important for you to understand that. And so I'd be more than happy to have those meetings. We'll have them as many as you need, but I think that's a way for you to get a better global picture of where we were, where we are, and now we all have to decide where we're headed. Okay? I didn't mean to take up that much time, but I want to make sure you understand that the offer's out there. Okay?
Is the town going to take over the Fox property? I thought that was
No,
owned by
we're not
Mohawk
taking it over.
Hudson Land Conservancy.
I misspoke. They donated it to
The Mohawk
Nature
Hudson Land
Conservancy.
Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy.
Yes, they donated it to them, and it's going to remain open space and trails, and they've got plans for that.
Right, but we're the ones,
Yes.
MHLC is the one who's doing all the work and paying
Yes,
for it.
definitely. Yes, they deserve the credit for that.
Unless you would like to.
We have plenty of parks, but it's really in a great spot because it's just down the road from, down or up the road from the new River Road Park and adjacent to the bike path. So it's really, it's a
Right,
great
we were
spot.
thrilled.
Yeah, so that's, I'm looking forward to seeing the.
Next spring, everybody come.
Yeah, but yes, they deserve the credit. They won Dr. Fox for doing that for the people of the town to enjoy.
Any final comments?
Thank you, Jill.
I just have got a follow-up question, basically, on the timing of the GEIS study, and whether that would be available to be part of this process?
There are 3 GISs in town, now, the airport and then
Lashkill.
Uh-huh.
The VAL was updated about 2 or 3 years ago, 2010, so 6 years ago. The airport, when we are starting the scoping of that, we're looking at the current GIS and saying, what do we want to look at to improve or to change? But after the scoping is done, we want to wait until the comp plan is done, because if the comp plan has any zoning changes, that will change how the GIS is structured. So we're going to get the scoping started, and then we're going to wait for the comp plan to be done before we finish up all the work on the GIS. The GIS is designed to look at infrastructure and say, if development comes along, what infrastructure is needed, and then how are we going to get the money, as the development comes in, how is that money collected? So we can't finalize that until we know what all the zoning is and we know what to expect to become the end developer. So you can't finish the GIS until you have a completed comprehensive plan, because these two kicked off together. CHA is working with us on the GIS, said, why don't we start the scoping, once we get that completed, we'll wait until the comp plan is done before we finish the GIS.
On the airport area GIS, isn't that a joint document with Albany County and the Village of Colony? Are they involved in the scoping? I've seen nothing as far as any type of, when you do a scoping under seeker, aren't you supposed to have, there's 3 agencies involved in the airport area GIS, just not the town of Colony. It's the Village of Colony.
The county was definitely involved, I can't
And
recall.
the Village of Colony as well.
All I've done is, I've got a proposal from CHA, we went in front of the town board about 4 weeks ago. They approved that you start that process. I have not met with CHA to start the scoping process, but they're the ones that are the experts in that, and that's what needs to be done.
Yes, good evening. Neil Gifford, Conservation Director of the Albany Pine Bush Preserve Commission. And I want to thank you for hosting this meeting and making it available to the public. The commission has worked for the last 20-some-odd years to protect what is really a jewel of the capital region, much of which exists in the town of Colony. The Pine Bush Preserve is a national natural landmark, best worldwide example of flat plant community any place on the planet. Supports many rare and endangered species, and as Supervisor Mahan alluded to, it's important to balance many different issues associated with comprehensive planning. Take a proactive approach to balancing those issues. It's exactly what a comprehensive plan is intended to do. So I want to commend you on making the process public. The commission and I personally had the great pleasure of participating not only in the town of Colony's comprehensive planning process, but other municipalities as well. But in particular, 10 years ago, with Mr. Welty at the helm, leading the public engagement process for your 2005 comprehensive plan was phenomenal. The turnout within the town of Colony relative to 3 other municipalities that I've worked with in comprehensive planning was phenomenal. You had a level of community engagement in that process that was par none. It was exceptional. So I'm encouraged that you again have Mr. Welty helping to lead this process. And to the extent that the commission has spent 20 years balancing conservation and economic development issues, providing for passive open recreational resources, providing tens of thousands of visitors with recreational opportunities, over 100,000 visitors to our Discovery Center, getting engaged and educated about the importance of balancing conservation with economic development. The commission and I personally look forward to working with you throughout this process to ensure that we're able to adequately represent those open space interests as well that Supervisor Mahan alluded to. Thank you.
And I think your comments are well taken, because that would be the reason why part of the top. Thank you so much. Before we close, any additional comments from the committee? So our next meeting is going to be September 21st. You can see from the agenda the topic of that meeting, and we'll see you all then.
We have an agenda?
Right here.
Yeah.